Wealthy billionaire cheated on his sick wife with mistress. She files for divorce and leaves with their baby. In a world where wealth and glamour often overshadow pain and loyalty, Adrian Lockwood's soaring empire was a testament to power, yet behind the polished veneer lay a brewing storm of betrayal and heartbreak. His wife, Catherine, beloved by many for her grace and kindness, suffered in silence from a life-threatening illness. Little did she know, as her health dwindled, her husband's wandering heart found dangerous solace in the arms of a cunning mistress. This tale unravels an emotional whirlwind, secrets, lies, and unimaginable twists, leading to a reckoning that changes their lives forever. Welcome, dear listeners, to a saga of love tested beyond its breaking point. Adrian Lockwood was born into privilege and possibility, the second child of Bernard Lockwood, a titan of the tech industry. The Lockwood name carried an aura of prestige across New York's lofty business circles. Tall, confident, and magnetically handsome, Adrian grew up believing that the world bent to his will. As a boy, he learned chess from grandmasters and ate caviar at diplomatic dinners, experiences that instilled in him a thirst for victory in every arena of life. By the time he turned 30, Adrian had built one of the most lucrative venture capital firms in the country, Lockwood Investments. It was an empire funded by old money, but propelled forward by Adrian's shrewd instincts and relentless pursuit of growth. The parties he hosted at his East Hampton estate dazzled the upper crust. Hollywood celebrities and Fortune 500 executives mingled under fairy lights and drank champagne from fluted glasses engraved with the Lockwood crest. To onlookers, Adrian seemed unstoppable, blessed by every good fortune life could offer. What the world outside never saw was the private man behind the confident smile. Though smooth in business, Adrian wrestled with perpetual dissatisfaction in his personal life. He replaced genuine emotional connection with glittering amusements. When he married Catherine, a painter whose gentle spirit and innate warmth contrasted sharply with his whirlwind existence, the media called it the wedding of the decade. There was something about Catherine's quiet strength that grounded him, if only for a time. Catherine was no stranger to adversity. Born Catherine Greenwood in a small Midwestern town called Fremont, she had been raised by her grandmother after losing her parents in a tragic accident at a young age. Growing up, painting was her solace. Through vivid colors and brushstrokes, she processed grief, hopes, and dreams for a future that promised better days. At an art gallery in Manhattan, her talent caught Adrian's eye, and in a surprising twist, he purchased every piece of her exhibition. When he introduced himself afterward, she found his confidence disarming but oddly reassuring. Their courtship was swift and passionate, culminating in a fairy tale wedding within a year. Still, beneath Catherine's serene exterior lurked a vulnerable secret. She'd been diagnosed with a rare heart condition that required constant monitoring. Adrian was fully aware of her illness and vowed to stand by her through sickness and health. In the early days of their marriage, he did exactly that. He accompanied her to medical appointments, arranged for world-renowned specialists to oversee her case, and even built a private in-home clinic so she'd never want for care. But success has a way of inflating egos. The more triumphs Adrian collected in boardrooms and stock markets, the less time he spent by Catherine's side. Board meetings expanded into after-hours networking, and after-hours networking gave way to late-night rendezvous with wealthy elites. Catherine spent quiet evenings painting in the sunroom, her heart condition making frequent appearances in the form of fatigue and terrifying arrhythmias. Adrian, increasingly absent, seemed unconsciously to drift from the vow he had once made so fervently. Every so often, glimpses of the old Adrian resurfaced, a soft touch on her shoulder, an impromptu vacation plan, a promise to do better. But these gestures grew rare. It was around this time that a predatory force began to circle his life, someone who would seize every neglected fragment of Adrian's attention and use it to build her own stronghold. That someone was Felicity Grayson. And so, as the world continued to applaud Adrian Lockwood for his audacious financial conquests, His marriage quietly teetered at the edge of a chasm no one else could see. Felicity Grayson was an ambitious socialite known for her impeccable style, strategic relationships, and a knack for showing up exactly where influence and wealth intersected. Daughter to a hedge fund manager in London, she had grown up in a realm of affluence that shaped her sense of entitlement. From a young age, she'd learned how to manipulate conversations to her advantage, flaunting her charm in the presence of those who could further her goals. She had first encountered Adrian Lockwood a few years prior at a high society fundraiser in Manhattan. The room brimmed with dignitaries, CEOs and celebrities, while Catherine mingled graciously, even finding time to chat with the waitstaff about their families. Felicity lingered by the bar, quietly taking measure of the who's who. Adrian was introduced to her briefly, but he was so focused on a speech he had to deliver that he scarcely noticed her. Felicity, however, never forgot him. Time passed. Adrian and Felicity's paths occasionally crossed at philanthropic events, charity auctions, or the exclusive Hampton soirees, where old money rubbed shoulders with new. Each time, Felicity edged a little closer into Adrian's circle, utilizing her connections to Adrian's acquaintances. She was never pushy, just alluring enough to stay relevant. While Adrian would nod politely and make small talk, Catherine, unthreatened, was often too busy greeting guests or conversing about her new painting series. As Adrian's star ascended, Felicity plotted her approach. After all, she was an expert observer. She took note of Catherine's health struggles, the faint trembling hands, the subtle shortness of breath, the occasional references to doctors and treatments. Felicity recognized a crack in the seemingly perfect marriage and bided her time. Her aim was not love, she never truly believed in that, but power and the satisfaction of winning a coveted prize. Months turned into years, and Felicity continued to attend every possible event Adrian might be at. She latched onto mutual associates like Jessica Carter, a prominent PR executive who often handled Adrian's press statements, or Michael Donovan, a real estate mogul who regularly dealt with Lockwood Investments. By keeping close to them, Felicity ensured she'd hear about Adrian's business trips and philanthropic endeavors. She strategically bumped into him at an overseas conference in Geneva, where her father's hedge fund had a vested interest. Their passing hellos turned into longer chats over coffee in the lobby, then dinners among larger groups. Felicity never overstepped. She simply made sure she was present, interesting, and, above all, available. Gradually, Adrian found himself warming to Felicity's laughter, her cunning wit. She was well-read, conversant about global markets, and boasted a subtle flirtation that made him feel as if the entire room disappeared whenever she spoke. It was a heady sensation for a man who was only half aware of how restless he'd become in his marriage. Catherine's health demands often sapped her energy. She wasn't always up for the late-night social scene or spontaneous getaways, even though she tried her best for Adrian's sake. Felicity, however, offered no such complications. The first real spark ignited at a private cocktail reception in London. Adrian had just closed a deal to expand Lockwood Investments' European footprint and was flush with celebratory triumph. Felicity, in a midnight blue gown, found him alone on the balcony. The hush of night enveloped them, and the city lights flickered below. Under the guise of congratulating him, she placed a delicate hand on his arm. In the gentle pressure of her touch, he sensed an invitation, one that whispered, "I can give you the excitement you're missing." That was the moment their relationship shifted from polite acquaintances to a flirtation that held the potential to unleash chaos. By the end of that night, Adrian could not deny the electric charge he felt whenever Felicity looked at him, and Felicity, seasoned in seduction, recognized that her patient game was about to pay off. Oblivious to the tempest brewing outside her world, Catherine Lockwood faced a daily battle within her own body. Her rare heart condition required a strict medication regimen. She often woke in the morning gasping for breath, her pulse erratic, requiring a moment's calm to steady her. On the worst days, she collapsed from sheer exhaustion after painting for only an hour. Her medical team, led by Dr. Rosemary Clark, visited the Lockwood penthouse frequently to monitor Catherine's condition. The in-home clinic was state-of-the-art, sporting advanced cardiac monitors and specialized equipment. Despite every modern convenience, Catherine often felt lonely, confined to a fortress of wealth that offered everything but the genuine companionship she needed most: Adrian's presence. Catherine's grandmother, Margaret Greenwood, would call from Fremont every Sunday, offering words of hope. "My sweet Cathy," she would say, "your heart has survived far greater sorrows. I know you can push through." These conversations gave Catherine the strength to endure, yet her nights were marked by an ache for the simpler life she'd once known, away from paparazzi and endless charity engagements. She felt the walls of this grand penthouse closing in, not just physically, but emotionally. Within the first few years of marriage, Adrian had been a more attentive spouse. He would skip flights to stay with Catherine during tough hospital visits, cradle her when her body shook from new medications, and line the walls with her artwork to remind her of her passion. But as Lockwood Investments exploded into a global giant, his devotion shifted, overshadowed by deals that demanded his globe-trotting presence and relentless attention. Catherine's heart condition, once a shared concern, became an afterthought in Adrian's hectic itinerary. She tried to keep pace, accompanying him to charity galas and investor dinners whenever her health allowed. Yet she noticed the subtle changes: Adrian's impatience with her fatigue, the vacant look in his eyes when she spoke of her condition, the fact that he started leaving events early or arriving late, offering half-baked excuses. She dismissed these signs at first, blaming his stress. But every so often, a flicker of suspicion gripped her. Could he be spending time with someone else? In desperate moments, Catherine blamed herself. She believed her illness had stolen the vibrancy that had once attracted Adrian. She'd look in the mirror and see a pale face, dark circles under eyes that had once sparkled. She worried her health struggles burdened him, made him resentful of the time he had to sacrifice for her. Yet Catherine's gentleness refused to give way to accusation or anger. Instead, she tried to communicate with Adrian, inviting him to doctor's appointments, planning candle-lit dinners at home, and asking him to share his feelings about her condition. More often than not, he was either too busy or too tired to engage. The distance between them swelled like an unseen chasm. One afternoon, after Adrian had cancelled lunch with her for the third time in a week, Catherine retreated to her studio. She stared at a canvas for nearly an hour, paralyzed. Her emotions felt too overwhelming, too tangled for any brush to capture. Finally, tears fell. She dropped to the floor, clutching her chest as her heart raged. In that moment she knew something was deeply wrong, not just in her physical body but in the relationship she had tethered her life to. Though she did not yet know the cause, her intuition screamed that her marriage was in grave danger. She resolved to fight for it, to heal it if possible, believing that love could conquer adversity. But love, unreciprocated, is a lonely war, and Catherine was about to discover just how alone she truly was. It happened on an unseasonably warm autumn evening in New York. The city was abuzz with the opening of a new Broadway production, and socialites flocked to an exclusive after-party at the Astor, a historic hotel boasting marble pillars and gold-trimmed everything. Adrian, freshly returned from a triumphant meeting in Singapore, had promised Catherine he'd attend a specialist appointment that afternoon. But at the last minute he texted, "Something urgent at the Astor. Clients in town, I'll be back late. Sorry." Catherine's heart sank, but she mustered a reply of understanding. She was used to the cancellations. She only wished it didn't hurt quite so much each time. That night, Felicity Grayson also arrived at the Astor, dressed in a sleek black gown that caressed every curve. She'd done her research and knew the potential investors Adrian would be meeting. Slipping into the room quietly, she located Adrian engaged in a heated discussion about a possible European merger. Smiling, she greeted him politely, then joined the circle, gracefully fielding questions and offering polite laughter at the appropriate times. When the discussion concluded, Adrian moved away from the group, wineglass in hand. Felicity followed. "A penny for your thoughts?" she teased. Adrian exhaled, rubbing his temple. A swirl of frustration crossed his features, tension from the meeting, the guilt over abandoning Catherine again, the sense of mounting pressure he couldn't explain. And right there, in that crack of vulnerability, Felicity struck with practiced expertise. "Come with me," she said softly, her eyes shining with the promise of solace. Before Adrian could form a coherent protest, she guided him through a side hallway into a smaller lounge area deserted by the crowd. Soft jazz played in the background, and warm candlelight flickered off the polished wooden paneling. "You look like you could use a moment away from it all." Felicity poured him a fresh glass of champagne. Adrian accepted it, inhaling deeply. Beneath the veneer of confidence, he felt a gnawing emptiness that had been growing for months, possibly years. Felicity seemed to sense that void, and offered him a soothing presence, at least momentarily. He considered what he was doing. Catherine was likely at home, possibly working on her art or waiting up for him. Yet, here he was, feeling an adrenaline surge sparked by the presence of this intriguing woman. For a second, his conscience flared. He had pledged his life to Catherine, in sickness and in health. But the memory of her fragile figure battling constant medical issues clashed with the exhilarating reality of standing next to a vivacious, unencumbered woman who looked at him like he was her entire world. He didn't resist when Felicity inched closer. The conversation flowed freely, peppered with flirtation and confessions of how lonely and misunderstood they both felt. Adrian's tension loosened, replaced by a dangerous sense of comfort. Around midnight, emboldened by champagne and stifled desires, he kissed her, tentatively at first, then with a passion that startled them both. In that stolen moment, he tasted both ecstasy and betrayal. Felicity was no stranger to affairs. She knew how to contain them, keep them quiet, and maintain the facade of innocence. She whispered for him to come with her to a secluded corner of the hotel's opulent garden. Together they walked among rose bushes and ivy-laden trellises, hidden from prying eyes. Under the moonlight, they sealed a new, unspoken pact. Adrian returned home in the early hours, the taste of her perfume lingering on his skin. Catherine was fast asleep, an open medical journal by her bedside. As he slipped into bed, a pang of guilt struck him like a hammer blow. He looked at Catherine's serene face, her breathing shallow yet rhythmic, and felt a war rage in his mind. The vow he'd made versus the hunger for what he believed he was missing. That night, a line had been crossed. They both knew it, Adrian and Felicity. And though he told himself it was just a fleeting mistake, something told him that once Pandora's box was opened, it would not be so easily sealed again. The days that followed were marked by a new energy crackling through Adrian's life. His appetite for business soared, fueled by the clandestine charge he got from stolen messages and secret rendezvous with Felicity. They discovered hidden corners of the city, luxury penthouse bars, private clubs, and hush-hush restaurants, where they could indulge their affair away from gossip-hungry paparazzi. Felicity thrived on the thrill, confident in her control. Adrian, however, oscillated between euphoria and self-reproach. Meanwhile, Catherine sensed a subtle shift. Adrian began returning home later and leaving earlier. His phone would buzz at odd intervals, and he'd step away to answer in hushed tones. The once sporadic distance became a chasm. Her suspicion, initially just a small seed, took root and grew. Her friend and confidant, Stephanie Hall, noticed the tension. Stephanie was a curator at a major Manhattan art gallery and had championed Catherine's work for years. One afternoon, over tea in Catherine's studio, Stephanie asked softly, "Is everything okay between you two?" Catherine set down her paintbrush. "I'm not sure," she confessed. "Adrian's been different. He always had to travel, always had late nights, but now it's as if he's hiding something." Stephanie reached out and squeezed Catherine's hand. "You might want to talk to him directly. You deserve honesty, especially with what you're going through." That evening, Catherine waited up for Adrian in the living room. He came home close to midnight, a faint smile flickering across his face when he saw her. Her eyes, brimming with worry, met his. "Are you hungry?" she asked, forcing normalcy. "I made some soup earlier." Adrian shook his head, sinking into the sofa across from her. "I'm fine, just tired." She took a breath, measuring her words. "I know work has been stressful lately, but I've been feeling—" She hesitated, carefully choosing how much vulnerability to show. "I've been feeling really alone, Adrian." His gaze flickered, and for a split second, guilt flashed in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he managed. "I'll try to do better." She pressed on. "Is there someone else?" Silence roared between them. Adrian's jaw tightened. "What makes you say that?" Catherine's heart pounded, a wave of panic threatening to choke her. Yet she managed to respond calmly. "I notice the calls, the late hours, the distance. I can't keep ignoring the feeling that something's off." Adrian exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "Work is intense right now. We're finalizing the European expansion and it's complicated. I'm not seeing anyone else, Catherine. You have to trust me." Relief and doubt mingled in Catherine's expression. She wanted desperately to believe him. Nodding quietly, she reached for his hand. He squeezed it, but the gesture felt hollow, unconvincing. Catherine retreated to their bedroom, tears brimming once out of his sight. Adrian slumped on the couch, burying his face in his hands. That same night, Felicity sent him a text. "Miss you already? Thinking of you." The phone vibrated on the coffee table. Adrian stared at the message, shame warring with desire. He typed a quick response, then deleted it. Instead, he stuffed the phone into his pocket and trudged to bed, where Catherine was already asleep, her heart monitor softly beeping in the hush of the room. From that point on, Catherine's suspicion grew with each passing day. She began noticing small anomalies, a lingering scent on Adrian's coat that didn't belong to him, a restaurant receipt from a place she'd never heard of, a single pink lipstick smudge on one of his dress shirts. Each clue weighed on her heart, yet for all her wariness, Catherine tried to maintain hope. She prayed it was just a phase. She prayed her illness wasn't pushing him away. She prayed that if she gave him a chance, he would do the right thing. Unbeknownst to her, the right thing was slipping further from Adrian's grasp each time he found himself enveloped in Felicity's beguiling presence. The unraveling began during a gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, hosted by a prestigious philanthropic society to benefit children's hospitals. Catherine, feeling relatively stronger that week, accompanied Adrian. She wore a flowing ivory gown that complemented her gentle features, though she was paler than usual. Still, she carried herself with dignity, determined to show her support for the cause and for her husband. Felicity was there as well, draped in a daring emerald dress that turned heads the moment she stepped into the grand hall. She initially kept her distance, engaging with other high-profile guests. But as the evening progressed, Catherine noticed them exchanging glances from across the room, glances too loaded to be purely innocent. Her heart pounded. Maybe she had imagined it, she told herself. But then Catherine overheard part of a hushed conversation between Felicity and a mutual acquaintance in the powder room. She caught Felicity's name, followed by the words Adrian Lockwood and secret rendezvous. The acquaintance laughed behind a fan, while Felicity offered a sly smile. Though the conversation paused the moment Catherine entered, her suspicions erupted into a maelstrom. Trying to steady herself, Catherine left the gala early. She retreated home, her breath ragged, her heart hammering so dangerously that she was forced to take her medication and lie down. Adrian returned past midnight, wearing the guilt on his face like a stain. He found her awake in bed, tears staining her pillow. "Catherine," he murmured, sitting beside her. She looked at him with eyes filled with both sorrow and anger. "I heard things tonight, Adrian. Terrible things." He didn't deny it, which was answer enough. The slow, tense silence that followed was the final blow. Tears welled in her eyes, and for the first time she felt a rift between them that words could never mend. She reached for her medication again, hands trembling. "It's Felicity, isn't it?" Catherine's voice trembled. "Tell me the truth." Adrian cast his gaze downward, silently confirming what she already knew. Guilt and an odd sense of relief converged in his chest, as if finally acknowledging the betrayal unburdened a secret he'd been carrying like a lead weight. "I'm sorry," he managed, voice barely above a whisper. Catherine closed her eyes, a wave of heartbreak more crushing than any physical pain she'd endured. She remembered her grandmother's words about resilience, but never had she felt so powerless. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, voice subdued. He hesitated. "A few months." In that simple admission, their marriage cracked. Catherine drew a shaky breath, tears cascading down her cheeks. She did not scream or rant, partially from her gentle nature and partially because her physical strength was already at its limits. Instead, she whispered, "Why? Have I not loved you enough? Is it because of my condition?" "No," Adrian said, eyes misting. "It's not your fault. God, Catherine, you're incredible. I felt lost. I made a terrible mistake." She stared at the ceiling, each heartbeat more painful than the last. Finally, in a voice etched with finality, Catherine said, "We'll talk in the morning. I need to rest." Adrian nodded, tears slipping down his face as he left her alone in the room. That night, neither of them slept. Catherine clutched her chest in a silent storm of grief, while Adrian paced the living room, tormented by his own conscience. Neither had any idea that even more shocking news would soon turn their lives upside down, the small miracle growing within Catherine's body. In the days that followed the shocking confrontation, Catherine's emotional world shattered like fragile glass. She avoided Adrian, who spent most nights in his office under the pretense of work. He felt too ashamed to face her directly, unsure if he had the right to claim a place by her side. Catherine, meanwhile, wrestled with heartbreak and an unrelenting question. Had she driven him away because of her illness? Stephanie Hall urged Catherine to see a therapist, or at least confide in someone qualified to guide her. Catherine, however, chose solitude, hoping that painting might help her process the pain, but every time she tried to lift a brush, her energy failed. Her limbs felt weak, her pulse raced for no apparent reason. Assuming it was stress from the betrayal, she increased her heart medication dosage and tried to rest. One afternoon, she experienced a dizzy spell so severe that she collapsed in her studio. Doctor Rosemary Clark was called immediately. Hooking Catherine up to a portable EKG, Dr. Clark checked her vitals. Something else caught her attention, an anomaly in Catherine's hormonal panel from a routine blood test taken the previous week. Dr. Clark requested a quick follow-up test. Catherine agreed, though she was too disoriented to question why. A few hours later, Dr. Clark returned with news that would change everything. Catherine was pregnant. Shock warred with a flutter of guarded hope. She and Adrian had discussed children in the abstract, always waiting for the right time, especially given her heart issues. The likelihood of conceiving was low, and if she did conceive, the pregnancy would be high risk. But here it was, a life stirring within her, against all odds. The potential complications loomed. A high-risk pregnancy could aggravate Catherine's heart condition, placing both her and the baby in danger. Yet, amid her heartbreak, a spark of happiness emerged. She was going to be a mother. She had dreamed of that possibility her entire life, albeit in better circumstances. When Adrian arrived home that evening, Catherine was seated in the living room, her hand absently resting on her abdomen. Though their relationship was in tatters, she felt it necessary to tell him. He entered, exhaustion etched into his face. "I have something to share," Catherine began, voice trembling. Adrian looked at her with wary eyes, bracing for more accusations or pleas. She took a breath. "I'm pregnant." He froze, the gravity of her words sinking in. "Pregnant?" he repeated, almost in disbelief. His eyes flickered from her face to her hands clasped around her stomach. A flurry of emotions crossed his expression: wonder, fear, guilt, and something akin to joy. Catherine expected him to be happy, or at least supportive, but she could see torment in his eyes. "Are you certain?" he whispered. She nodded, tears brimming. "Dr. Clark confirmed it. I'm about 6 weeks along. It's risky. For me. But I want to keep this baby, Adrian." Adrian's mind spun with conflicting thoughts. He recalled Felicity's texts, the passionate nights they'd stolen, the lies he'd told Catherine. And now, here was a chance for a family. A wave of regret threatened to drown him. He kneeled beside her, gently taking her hands. "Catherine, I'm so sorry for everything. You have no idea how sorry I am." She stiffened. "I don't know if apologies can fix us, but I do know this baby deserves better." He nodded, tears in his eyes. He made a vow right there to end his affair, to focus on his wife and unborn child. He even typed out a breakup text to Felicity, telling her they were done. He promised Catherine that he would cut off all communication, that he would be by her side. And for a few fleeting days, it seemed he genuinely intended to keep his word. But Felicity Grayson was not a woman to be discarded so easily. She had her own plans that would pull Adrian back into her orbit, shaking Catherine's world once again. The day after Adrian resolved to end things with Felicity, he discovered just how tangled his life had become. Felicity appeared at his office unannounced, gliding past the reception desk with the confidence of someone who owned the place. Adrian's assistant, Joseph Moore, tried to intervene, but Felicity's imperious gaze hushed him. Adrian looked up from his desk to see her standing in the doorway, fury and hurt blazing in her eyes. "Why are you ignoring my calls?" she demanded, stepping into his private office. He steeled himself. "Felicity, this can't continue. I'm sorry if I led you on." "If?" she shot back, voice trembling with barely contained outrage. "We've been intimately involved for months, Adrian. You think you can just walk away and that's that?" He sighed, desperation clawing at him. "Catherine is pregnant. I have to be there for her, for our child." The mention of Catherine's pregnancy drew a scornful laugh from Felicity. "You think you can toss me aside because your wife is suddenly more convenient? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is for me?" She paced the office, long fingernails digging into her palm. "I gave you everything. I made you feel alive again. And now you're done with me?" Adrian stood, trying to maintain composure. "I can't continue living like this. I have a responsibility to my family." "That's exactly what this is, isn't it? A matter of responsibility, not love." Felicity's voice dripped with bitterness. "You're choosing her, not because you love her, but because you feel obligated by her condition and this pregnancy." He didn't deny it. He couldn't articulate the tangle of guilt, pity, and lingering affection that fueled his decision. Felicity glowered, then lowered her tone to a menacing hiss. "You'll regret this, Adrian. If you won't keep me in your life willingly, then you'd better be prepared for how I might retaliate." Her threat lingered in the air long after she stormed out. Adrian sank into his chair, pressing his hands to his face. He knew Felicity was capable of making scenes, of whispering rumors that could tarnish his reputation and devastate Catherine. But what choice did he have? His conscience, battered though it was, clung to the idea that salvaging his marriage was the honorable path. That evening, Catherine was resting in bed, a gentle classical tune playing in the background, when Felicity arrived uninvited at the penthouse. She claimed to be there under urgent business involving Adrian's European merger. The staff, unfamiliar with the drama, let her in. Catherine, hearing raised voices, left her bedroom to see Felicity in the foyer, her expression triumphant and venomous. Adrian rushed in from behind, attempting to keep them apart, but Felicity locked eyes with Catherine. "So you're the saint he's chosen over me?" Felicity spat, words fueled by scorn. Catherine's face went pale. Her hand moved instinctively to her abdomen. Catherine's voice wavered. "Why are you here?" Felicity laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "I wanted to tell you the truth about what your husband and I have been doing behind your back, in case he forgot to mention the details." Adrian interjected, "Felicity, enough." But Felicity pressed on, painting vivid images of the affair, describing times, places, and even intimate moments. Catherine stood there, heart pounding, eyes brimming with tears. It was too much. She was only weeks pregnant, her body already under immense strain. She couldn't bear the weight of such explicit betrayal. She trembled, her vision blurring. Adrian reached for Catherine, but she stumbled, nearly collapsing as her heart hammered dangerously. Dr. Clark had warned them about undue stress, the risk of her collapsing, or worse, if her condition spiked. Panicked, Adrian scooped her into his arms, shouting for help from the penthouse medical staff. In the chaos, Felicity slipped away. Her message delivered, she had no intention of dealing with the fallout. She left behind a wife trembling on the edge of a health crisis, and a husband forced to confront the devastation of his own making. Catherine recovered slowly over the next few days, but her heart condition took a serious turn. Dr. Clark insisted that she avoid any further emotional trauma, warning that stress hormones could trigger arrhythmias dangerous to both her and the baby. Adrian hovered around her, anxiety etched on his face, offering apologies and care. But Catherine's trust was shattered. While in bed, Catherine made a quiet resolution. She could not continue in a marriage steeped in betrayal. She could not endure the agony of worrying if Adrian's next business trip was merely another rendezvous. She had to think of the baby growing inside her, a life that deserved stability and love, untainted by lies. One morning, Catherine asked Stephanie Hall to contact a reputable family lawyer. Within days, a seasoned attorney named Harriet Saunders came to the penthouse. She was a middle-aged woman with a calm demeanor and a sharp intellect. Catherine explained her situation, her voice trembling as she recounted the affair, the heartbreak, and her precarious health. Harriet listened intently, occasionally jotting down notes. She gently explained Catherine's rights, how the division of assets might work, and the steps to ensure child support. Catherine never cared about the vast fortune Adrian had accumulated, nor the luxurious lifestyle she had become accustomed to. She wanted only her freedom from a man who'd broken her heart, and to protect her child from future turmoil. The divorce papers were drafted in a matter of days. Catherine insisted on simplicity. No ugly fight if it could be avoided. She requested enough financial security to care for her child and cover her medical expenses, though Harriet assured her that Adrian would inevitably owe her far more under the law, especially given the circumstances. Then came the moment Catherine handed Adrian the papers. He was in the makeshift nursery, a room Catherine had started decorating with soft pastel paintings. He stood there, gazing at a half-painted mural of teddy bears floating on clouds, his expression a mixture of sadness and longing. She approached quietly, manila folder in hand. "Adrian," she said, voice calm but resolute, "this is over." He turned, eyes clouded with grief. "Catherine, please don't do this. I'm ending things with Felicity. It's all over. I want to be here for you and the baby." Catherine's chin quivered. "It's too late. My heart can't bear this pain anymore. For the sake of our child, I need to be strong. And I can't do that if I'm constantly questioning your fidelity." He swallowed hard, tears glistening. "I made the biggest mistake of my life, but I swear I'll spend the rest of my days making it up to you." She shook her head slowly. "Some betrayals can't be undone, Adrian. It's not just about the affair. It's about the trust that's gone, and my health that's at risk. I need peace, real peace, to raise our baby." Handing him the folder, she whispered, "Please sign them. Let's not drag this through a public court. I don't want the headlines. I just want out." Adrian held the papers as though they were a venomous snake, the weight of his actions pressing down on him. He wanted to argue, to tear them up, but the look in Catherine's eyes left no room for bargaining. Her decision was final. With trembling hands, Adrian nodded. "I'll sign if that's truly what you want, but know that I love you, Catherine." I always will." She turned away, tears carving silent paths down her cheeks. In that moment, love felt like a distant memory, something overshadowed by heartbreak and betrayal. Catherine clenched her jaw, steadied herself, and walked away, determined that her future, however uncertain, would not be shackled by the past. Catherine packed her essentials over the following week, determined to leave the penthouse that had once symbolized love and security. She arranged for her grandmother's house in Fremont to be her sanctuary for the remainder of the pregnancy. It was a small, cozy home filled with memories of simpler days. Harriet Saunders helped coordinate her quiet departure, ensuring Catherine would remain shielded from the media as much as possible. News of the Lockwood divorce, however, broke faster than either of them anticipated. Tabloids splashed headlines like "Billionaire's secret affair exposed" and "Sick wife walks out." Paparazzi camped outside the penthouse and the offices of Lockwood Investments, shouting invasive questions at Catherine whenever she appeared. Fearing for her health, Harriet swiftly booked a private flight to Fremont. In one final conversation, Adrian begged Catherine to let him accompany her. He yearned to be part of the child's life, to support her medical needs, to prove in some small way that he could be there for them. But Catherine, gently yet firmly, refused. "I need to focus on my health and our baby," she said. "This is something I have to do on my own right now." Adrian, crushed, nodded. He watched her leave with tears that refused to stop flowing. A swirl of regret, self-loathing and heartbreak battered him as he stood in the empty foyer. Felicity Grayson was nowhere in sight. She had vanished into the shadows once her game was lost, leaving Adrian to face the media storm and a hollow life in the penthouse. For the first time he recognized that all the money, all the success, meant little without the love he'd so carelessly betrayed. Once in Fremont, Catherine found solace in the familiar creak of old floorboards and the scent of homemade apple pie that her grandmother baked. Days passed quietly, each breath feeling a fraction lighter as she distanced herself from New York's chaos. She continued to see Dr. Clark via telehealth sessions and consulted a local obstetrician who specialized in high-risk pregnancies. The child growing within her became her guiding light, a reminder that love, while damaged in one place, could flourish anew in another. Little by little, Catherine regained her strength. She began painting again, soft, hopeful pieces of a mother cradling an infant in a flower-strewn meadow. While her heart condition remained a constant worry, the slower pace of life and the unconditional support of her grandmother seemed to stabilize her health. Stephanie Hall called often, updating her on the New York art scene, encouraging Catherine to plan a comeback gallery show once the baby was born. Catherine found herself smiling, imagining a future in which she and her child stood side by side, free from heartbreak. The divorce proceedings moved forward smoothly as Adrian chose not to contest anything. He granted Catherine the bulk of the settlement she requested, including child support that would be placed in a trust. He also arranged for top cardiologists to be on standby near Fremont, secretly footing the bill despite Catherine's protestations. He knew it was a small gesture compared to the damage he had caused, but it was all he could do now. Catherine never dissuaded Adrian from seeing the baby once born. She believed children deserved the love of both parents if possible, yet she made it clear their marriage was over. She wanted to live free from the web of lies and the emotional toll they extracted. Adrian, despite the ache in his chest, agreed to respect her boundaries. In the hush of Fremont nights, Catherine would rest her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's gentle kicks. A mixture of sadness and hope filled her. She had lost one life and gained another, all in the span of a tumultuous few months. For now, she resolved, that was enough. She and her baby would forge a new dawn, one painted with the vibrant hues of resilience and promise. Months slipped by in Fremont as Catherine's pregnancy progressed. Each trimester brought new challenges, especially with her heart condition, but also renewed determination. The local obstetrician, Dr. Patel, was kind and thorough, carefully monitoring her vitals at every stage. Harriet Saunders visited once, delivering final updates on the divorce settlement. Everything was nearly wrapped up, requiring only official signatures. Catherine thanked Harriet with a soft smile, expressing relief that the legal ties to Adrian were almost severed. Throughout this period, Adrian wrote heartfelt letters to Catherine, apologies, updates, and random musings about how he was rethinking his life. He no longer travelled as frequently, delegating responsibilities at Lockwood Investments so he could reflect on his failures. He even attended therapy, acknowledging how his unchecked ambition and inability to deal with emotional vulnerability had fueled his destructive choices. Catherine never replied, unsure if she was ready for a dialogue, but she read every letter, tears sometimes staining the pages, reminded of the man she had once loved so deeply. Late autumn arrived, and with it came the threat of early labor. Catherine went into contractions a few weeks shy of her due date. Dr. Patel and a cardiac specialist rushed to her grandmother's house. The baby's heartbeat was strong, but Catherine's was erratic, her fragile heart straining under the stress of labor. They rushed her to the local hospital, which was modest but well prepared thanks to Dr. Patel's foresight and Adrian's quiet funding that had improved its cardiac facilities. Anesthetists stood by, ready for an emergency C-section if her heart faltered. Margaret Greenwood held Catherine's hand in the delivery room, whispering prayers and encouragement. The night stretched on, each contraction a precarious balancing act between life and death. But at dawn, amid a swirl of doctors and beeping monitors, Catherine's cries broke into the air, along with the first wail of a newborn. A baby boy arrived, small but healthy, as though the universe had granted Catherine a miracle she scarcely dared to hope for. In that final push, Catherine lost consciousness. Her heart rhythm became dangerously unstable, and the medical team scrambled to stabilize her. Margaret was ushered out, baby in her arms, tears of both joy and terror streaming down her face. For an agonizing hour, the doctors fought to regulate Catherine's heartbeat. Finally, just as hope began to dim, her rhythm steadied, regaining a fragile equilibrium. When Catherine woke, her first question, in a weak whisper, was about her baby. That same morning, Adrian arrived at the hospital unannounced. Stephanie Hall had called him when Catherine went into labor, believing he had a right to know. He rushed from New York by helicopter, ignoring potential media speculation. Outside Catherine's room, he quietly spoke to Dr. Patel, who updated him on the precarious situation. Adrian's heart clenched when he learned just how close Catherine had come to slipping away. After receiving permission, he stepped inside the dimly lit room. Catherine lay in bed, pale, her eyes fluttering with exhaustion. Margaret was by her side, cradling the tiny infant. A nurse adjusted IV lines and monitors that beeped softly, while another stood by with medication. Margaret glanced at Adrian, tension brewing as she recalled how deeply he had hurt her granddaughter. But Catherine opened her eyes at the sound of footsteps and saw him standing there, tears brimming in his eyes. Her gaze flickered down to the baby in Margaret's arms, a silent nod granting permission for Adrian to approach. Adrian took measured steps toward the bed, each one feeling like a trespass. His voice trembled. "Catherine, are you okay?" She nodded weakly. "Dr. Patel said I'll need monitoring for a while, but I'll recover." Her eyes shifted to the sleeping infant. "Meet your son." In that moment, Adrian felt a tidal wave of gratitude and grief. He realized how close he'd come to losing both of them, how his own recklessness had nearly cost them everything. He carefully reached for the baby, eyes filling with tears as he cradled the tiny bundle. "He's beautiful." For the first time in months, Catherine allowed herself to soften toward Adrian, if only a little. "He needs a name," she said quietly. Adrian stared at his son, a swirl of emotions rendering him speechless. Before he could suggest one, Margaret piped in, "Catherine wanted to name him Ethan, after her grandfather, who was the gentlest soul I ever knew." Adrian nodded, tears escaping his eyes. "Ethan Lockwood," he whispered, pressing a tender kiss to the baby's brow. Though Catherine was physically and emotionally spent, she felt a profound sense of relief at hearing the name. A wave of tenderness washed over her as she watched Adrian hold their newborn son. There were still walls between them, tall ones built by betrayal, but in that fleeting instant they shared a bond unbreakable by any divorce decree. They were Ethan's parents. Later, after Margaret took the baby to the nursery, Catherine and Adrian sat in silence. She was propped up by pillows, an IV line in her arm, her face etched with exhaustion. Adrian, perched on a chair, looked at her with pleading eyes. "Catherine, I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, and I won't ask you to change your mind about the divorce. But please, allow me to be part of Ethan's life. Let me support you both, however I can." Catherine's gaze drifted to the window, where the morning sun cast a gentle glow. "I would never deny Ethan his father," she whispered. "But I need time, Adrian. My heart needs time, if it ever chooses to heal." She paused, turning back to him. "I don't want to talk about us right now. All my energy must go into getting stronger and caring for Ethan." Adrian nodded, relief and sorrow dancing in his expression. "I understand. Thank you for letting me be here." She closed her eyes, tears slipping down her cheeks. A fragile truce had settled between them, one built on shared responsibility and the unconditional love they already felt for their son. Outside, the hospital corridors bustled with the everyday hum of life. Inside that quiet room, two broken hearts found a moment of peace in the presence of new life. Thank you for joining me on this intense journey of heartbreak, resilience, and hope. Catherine's fight for self-worth and her fierce commitment to her child show that no matter how dark the storm, we can find the strength to start anew. Betrayal may have torn her world apart, but love, pure and unselfish, lit a path toward healing. Adrian's choices led him down a road of regret, reminding us that some lessons come at a price too high to ignore. Now, a new dawn emerges for both, each step forward shaped by courage and hard-earned wisdom. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like, share and subscribe to this channel. Your support means the world to us, and by sharing, you help others discover these heartfelt stories. Stay tuned for more emotional tales that explore the depth of love, loss, and redemption. Thank you for watching.